There's 7 words here. There are 7 ideas that I want to get at. So one is that we can measure objects. And there's many things about an object that we can measure. 2 is that we need units. And sometimes we confound things and we say, I got a 2-cent candy. Well, 2 cents, that's not type of candy, that's normally a unit. Or mileage in miles, or voltage in volts. So we need to keep that straight. We could use a common standard here. You could use a penny to judge how your tires are wearing, or you could use carob seeds to judge the weight of a diamond or something like that. Those would be called common standards because they're very easy to find. Or we could have a prototype standard. Here we have Legrand K, the international prototype kilogram. No longer used as a standard, but that little object way down here is what was the definition of a kilogram compared to that. Or we could have a natural standard. So this is the standard for a second here. The key thing here is that it's a set of instructions, and you can duplicate those instructions with lots of variations without losing any precision, right? I can print it on different colored paper, doesn't matter. You can have intermediate standards. So these are things that are traceable back to a prototype standard or a natural standard, or the most authoritative standard we call a master standard. So whichever in the context you're working on is most authoritative. So to summarize, here's the 7 concepts that I just described, and I'll be using this language for the rest of the talk. So what makes a measurement good? So I went looking, how do we know when we have good measurement standard? And I really like this particular book, seems to have a lot to say. So Robert Crease, The World in Balance, and he describes 3 characteristics of good measurement. And the first is that a measurement must be appropriate to the intended task. It just will not do to measure a bale of hay in carrots. This cartoon is supposed to show a bale of hay being measured in stones. And it won't do to measure diamonds in stones, right? Crease also says that we should have accessibility. Almost everybody can measure a pinch of pepper, but not many of us can measure 300 milligrams of pepper accurately in our kitchens. That measurement is not accessible in that location. And we should have assurance. And here Crease is talking of that the measurement needs to do what people expect it to do. Here I've got 2 types of accuracy described. We need to assure that it's delivering the right thing. Maybe we need to assure it's delivering the correct resolution. We don't care about the accuracy. But whatever characteristics you're putting there, it has to have assurance. So here in the CEC, in past meetings and years, we've talked about something called multi-aspectual normativity theory, or we give it a nice long name. And I'm going to try to relate that to Crease's important properties that we just discussed. Uh-oh, that's too much stuff, isn't it? You're not supposed to make slides like this. So, there it is. That's what I want to talk about. Let me talk about it bit by bit here. So here in the corner are the 3 properties that Crease brings to us. And here in the other corner, we have 6 aspects of technology. So this textbook by Monsma, or edited by Monsma, Responsible Technology, describes these 6 aspects as things that we should consider of every technology that we're interested in to get a holistic perspective of that technology. And then in this book, edited by Monsma, they go on to describe how do we evaluate these aspects? Well, Christians want to choose norms that are rooted in the Bible. So, for example, the aesthetic aspect should produce delightful harmony, and then they describe how that relates to certain Bible texts and so forth. So here we have these ideas all kind of related to each other. Creases, standards, the aspects, and some Christian norms. So, looks to me like Crease missed two entirely in the RT's aspects of technology, and there's one thing he talks about a lot, is how a good measurement standard should relate to other people and stuff, but he never really names it or discusses it. So let me go through these one item at a time here and talk a little bit. So on the aesthetic aspect here, you know, when you use this standard, is there joy that follows? Is there a melding of function and beauty? Is there a wedding together of God, people, and all of creation? Do we find these kind of things? And Crease discusses stuff like this in his book in a secular context. So I'd say he didn't name it, but it's there. How about the ethical aspect? In RT, the norm is called caring. That's the standard, promote care and love for each other. So good standards should enable like accurate medical bills and things like that. Well, maybe this isn't the most important thing, right? I think Crease really kind of nailed the main things we should be thinking about. But maybe we can't achieve this caring aspect, this caring norm, without having those aspects of Crease. And the pistic aspect, can we trust this? Like, if we use this standard, are we going to expose people to dangerous radioactivity? That would be a bad thing. And these kind of things come only with experience. You can't anticipate the unanticipatable stuff. So trust is going to be one of the last norms to be achieved typically. And Steve Vanderleest in this group here has also proposed another norm that might apply to technology, and that is humility. So suppose that we have a natural standard and we built a prototype from it, and we built intermediate standards from the prototype, and then in a fire, accidentally, the prototype is destroyed. And so we go back to the natural standard, we should be able to build a new prototype. But we find out that, oh, there were some ambiguities in the way the standard was written, and we've lost the craft that was used to make the technology. Ever try to write an 8-inch floppy disk now, right? I mean, it looked so simple years ago. And so you can get into a situation where you think you got it, but you don't. So these things that I've been talking about so far are all kind of derived out of Doiwier's philosophy, and Doiwier has proposed not 6, but 15 aspects of reality that should be considered in order to holistically understand a technology. So, you know, line them up here. Responsible technology has grouped 3 of those aspects together into the cultural. And then there's these lower aspects here where Doiwier posits that you can't develop norms. You just have to obey them. The law of gravity, a physical aspect of our creation, is something you cannot defy. So we just have to obey. That's why there are no norms for the lower aspects there. For full achievement in the higher norms, we need to achieve them usually one at a time. Can't have trust without caring. Can't have caring without justice, and so forth. So there's my slide. I've done my best to relate Crease's properties into this larger philosophy. So let's talk about how standards of measurement have performed through 3 eras of time. So I'm going to ask the main question here: how do standards of measurement depend on God's creation and our human response to that? Well, the oldest surviving accounts of measurement standards are from Babylonian and Mesopotamian era, and they're very primitive, and they're typically common standards. So, you know, like carob seeds and so forth, because that's what they had. And even though we might say it's primitive, it served, right? It's not scientific necessarily, but it performed in the society. And so it was well accepted. I think I just went backwards a slide. There we go. Yeah, so there's nothing unscientific about using common standards. You can observe and get results from that. So these standards were set by government officials and so forth, and sometimes that was all the same person, right? A soldier who's a priest who is a government official. So they had problems in that society with intertwinement of roles and so forth. So people started moving, what's more accurate? What do we develop? Prototype standards came along. The Bible mentions the sanctuary shekel. And these are appeals to the norm of delightful harmony. We're starting to achieve higher norms in this philosophy. And by the time of the French Revolution, practically all the standards were prototypes. And there's a lot of locality to this. And people didn't know how a U.S. gallon relates to an imperial gallon and so forth. So eventually the MKS system was proposed. And this really is an appeal to delightful harmony, right? To get everybody related on the same system. And there's enthusiasm for this, but there were many difficulties. So eventually people started looking at natural standards. The first natural standard that actually was achieved in a practical way was in 1960. I mean, that was in my lifetime. So updated in 1983, so now it's the distance light travels in a second. Before that, it was a certain number of wavelengths of light of a certain color. And now, just November 18, 2018, they decided to replace the kilogram. So the international prototype kilogram is no longer a standard. New technology, the Kibble balance, or the Watt balance, allowed this. And they had to decide that Planck's constant is a known number. So it's pointless to measure Planck's constant anymore. You should get exactly that number. So the case for appreciating these as common grace. There's my definition of common grace. I got to hurry up here. So these standards enable our humanly devised norm in the higher aspects of our philosophy here. How deep does this go? Well, you remember that standards war? It's not necessary that there's going to be a winner. In this case, there was a winner, VHS won. But in the case of AM radio, everybody lost. Where's AM these days, right? Did you know AM radio has a stereo standard, and it can sound as good as FM almost, but no one uses it because of a lot of problems. People fought over that standard and killed the whole technology. Doyward says that these laws are bounded between the divine and the creation, and I find that just a very interesting concept. So, in conclusion, standard of measurement is measurable. We can compare it to things, such as in this philosophy that I presented. We discussed 7 conceptions of the word measurement. We discussed aspects of reality as a technique to get a holistic perspective. In the higher aspects, humans create norms, and Christians desire biblical norms. In the lower aspects, we must obey. The ancient standards are frequently common standards, and they gave way to prototype and then natural standards. And Christians find that the SI standards then stand on a foundation in God's creation. Actually, all the standards in the past do, if you think about it. Where do those carob seeds come from, and why are they all so uniform? The depth of this grace is just immense. It's like rainfall. It falls on everybody, and it's life-giving. So Max Planck says that natural standards of measurement give us the ability to have something of significance for all cultures, even unearthly and non-human ones. But for Christians, it's the other way around, folks. God, the non-human one, has given us this life-giving common grace. So honest scales and balances do belong to the Lord. All the weights in the bag are of his making. Here's where all the slides came from, and I think I'm out of time for
Do
questions.
you have time for questions? Do you have time for a couple?
Okay.
Just sort of thinking out loud, you had a phrase about the British system and their resistance to the SI, I think it was.
Yes.
And is that like an ethical problem, that we're so, even as Americans, we're so resistant to a normative system because of our, is it a prideful heritage?
So there was some difficulty there. My perspective is that the Lord has reined in our sinful responses to that and provided a smooth outcome in the end. Does that answer your question, perhaps? Or?
I guess so. I'm not sure I had a clear question.
Yeah.
But it's
But
how
see,
that
there
fits
was
into
the opportunity for head-on conflict, right? We're going to set the measurement standards. We're going to gain control.
Mhm.
And that hasn't generally been the outcome of most of these meetings. It's really remarkable. What other standard in the world is accepted as completely as the SI standard? Whoever is there, I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
I had the opportunity to review your paper, and it was wonderful. I was blessed by reading it, and I appreciate that table that you made that clarifies things a lot. And also, I'm just thinking, how do we get to know God better through this revelation, that's general revelation of natural standards that He has given us? What does it teach us about God?
That maybe ought to be my next paper or something. But I have been thinking about that. Perhaps this dividing line between the lower and the upper aspects is somewhat of the difference between the humanities and the STEM subjects. And that kind of explains for me why I was attracted to engineering, is because when I consider those lower aspects, I feel like I'm getting closer to my Maker and closer to understanding what it is desired of me in my life. But to do that in the upper aspects requires entirely different techniques, because there's the norms that are involved. And I don't know if you want to say one is more complicated than the other. I don't think that. It's just, there's the difference there, a very big difference. Yes?
I'm a little confused by your statement when they said that as of last fall, the kilogram is no longer defined by that artifact in Paris. It's not all clear to me what a kilogram is defined as. You mentioned some words that I didn't understand.
Oh.
What is a kilogram?
That, see, well, set your watch by that clock over there, right? Or go to that scale. That's how you know what a kilogram is. That's the kind of unsatisfaction that you find every time you try to do this. How do you know that the speed of light is a constant? We have to take it on faith. We don't know, other than it's, every time we try it, it seems to work. So, yeah, you just have to take some of this on faith. But what is a kilogram? You can look up the new definition. Let's go back a slide or two.
You mentioned the Kimball balance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. I'm trying to back it up. I've gone too far. I see what's happening. It's taking too long to load the slides. I don't know if I'm going to get control of this thing. I want the one with the colorful diagram on it. Oh well. Anyway, what is a kilogram? Essentially, somebody took what they thought was 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters of purified water and said that's a kilogram at one time. And then other people said that's not very accessible. So let's make a platinum cylinder. And so they made a platinum cylinder that balanced with their thing. And then they said, the water's no longer the thing, now it's this guy. And there have been meetings throughout history changing standards like this. And so that platinum cylinder served for, 130 years or something? And now people have said, well, that's not very accessible. And we want a natural standard. And so now we have a new definition. That's what a kilogram is. That's all a kilogram is.
All right, let's thank Doug.
Quick question. How can you just interpret the 6 days, the creation of the universe? Like, that's 6 days to actual 6 days.
What, that was in the
It's a
transition?
measurement by God.
Pardon? Come on, Justin, start talking. Yeah, quick.
Oh, yeah.
All right, as we're finalizing the setup, so another Doug, we have Doug Smith from Baylor University. He's going to present for us on the design, build, and impact of a basic utility vehicle in Uganda.
Good evening, and thanks for hanging around all day. I know I've got the last talk today, and I stand between you and the nice-looking dessert that's out there on the table. So I'll try to get through this pretty quickly, but I do want to tell you this story because I think it's pretty important. It's certainly special to me. I want to talk about some work that we're doing at Baylor and the interaction that we've had with some folks in Uganda in building a BUV, or a basic utility vehicle. I'm Doug Smith, I'm associate professor there. I threw some pictures on here just to kind of familiarize you with Baylor. Of course, we have academics, athletics, and research, but what I'm really going to be talking about here is the work that we do in missions. And there's quite a bit that goes on at Baylor in the area of missions. I'm also the graduate program director in mechanical engineering. We have a complete graduate program to get a master's degree and also a PhD. So I'm going to put a shameless plug in for our program for all of you. Maybe take some of this information back to your students that might be interested in graduate work at a Christ-centered university. We've got about 17,000 students altogether, about 2,700 are graduate students in the science or in engineering, the School of Engineering and Computer Science. We do have mechanical, electrical, and computer science, about 1,000 undergrads and about 100 graduate students in mechanical. About 450 undergrads, and you can see there, at least this is of last fall, about 20 masters and 14 PhD. I expect that to grow a little bit for this fall. I put a few things on here just to kind of highlight some of our research areas. We're doing some pretty interesting stuff in additive manufacturing and ice accretion, composites, many different things going on. And certainly if anybody's interested, I'm looking for good applicants, okay, just like every other grad program director is doing. So anyway, I've got some handouts outside there if you want to grab those and take them back, or certainly contact me anytime. I'd love to talk to you or talk to any of your students about that. What I'm here though primarily to talk about is our BUV project and what we did over in Uganda. This is a picture of the BUV, and I'll say more about that as we work our way through, but if you're not familiar with it, maybe this picture helps at least here to start. I want to talk a little bit about the motivation for this project or what we did, give you a little bit of rundown of the players, that is our Baylor BUV group, as well as the Village of Hope Uganda, our partner over in Uganda. Talk a little bit about the design and build. I got a little video I want to show towards the end, and then just throw out this idea about what I call missions-driven learning, which is kind of an interesting way to look at how we can bring together many things, and our students learn quite a bit across the spectrum, and then conclude at the end. So as far as motivation goes, you can imagine carrying water multiple hours a day in order to facilitate just the needs of your own family. This would be a very arduous task. And you can imagine also that in doing so, you're giving up the education that maybe your children might need. And I know, as Mike mentioned yesterday, I thought that was very telling, that maybe you're giving up education for your kids in order for them to pick up sticks. Right? So definitely a different situation than we're used to here. And also maybe struggling with getting your goods to market, possibly losing 20, 30, 40% of them on your way there, and just working through that process. And if that's not enough, and the poverty that's associated with that, at least in Uganda, and that's where our partner is in Uganda, they suffered through a brutal civil war, especially in the north. And so Joseph Kony, maybe some of you have heard of this, up to about 2005, made child soldiers out of the young kids that were in the huts out in the countryside here across northern Uganda. And so, and this certainly affected a generation of children. I do want to point out here, there's a map here of the affected area. You can see Uganda, Kampala's the capital. If you've ever flown in, you probably flew into Entebbe. Up here is where Joseph Kony kind of had his strength, or his hold on the country. And I do want to point out Gulu, I'll talk about that a little bit. This little line across here and back down is the Victoria Nile. And the area that we worked in is right up in here. They've been run out since about 2005, and so Baylor actually approved us to go up into that area to minister and to do a project. If you ever want more information on at least a perspective of the war, there's a really good book, Girl Soldier, you might want to take a look at. So as far as motivation is concerned, I know Mike mentioned this yesterday as well, that we're called to go help in situations like this. The king will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. And as I sit there as an engineer, I kind of wonder, well, what is there that I can do? There's a massive need, and here I am. Do I go over there like I used to hear about in Baptist Sunday school and sell everything, go over there and be a missionary? And I don't know if that's really what I'm called to do. Instead, I might look here and just note that we are called to use our gifts. So each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. If I look at that and I say, okay, as a mechanical engineer, what could I do? What do I have to offer? And I think towards, there's many things, and what God has blessed me with is the idea of transportation. Right? Mechanical engineers are involved in transportation all over the place. So up comes the BUV. And the BUV is not new with Baylor. In fact, I credit Will Austin at Institute for Affordable Transportation probably some 20 years ago for starting the idea of the BUV. Basic utility vehicle, you can see some of the attributes there. I want it to be simple, durable, lightweight, low cost. Parts locally sourced is a big one, right? Because when you don't want a little spring to break on that's only available in Waco, Texas, and that now the thing sets for 2 years, right? Easily maintained, carries heavy payloads, and gives hope for the future. Right, so if I just kind of poke at this and show you a few things, we want to have a fairly large cargo area. I would say that, and I should say pounds, I'd say we probably could handle about 2,000 pounds on this one. All right, and by the way, this is the one that we built in Uganda in 2018. Safety first, there's a roll bar on that for our passengers. We've kind of migrated to a simple 3-wheel design. Typically you want a small engine, 10 to 20 horsepower, something that's fuel efficient. And probably, if you're wondering, something that would pull this along about 20 miles an hour on a nice flat place. Rugged steel frame. We actually use a front-wheel drive, I'll say more about this, but a front-wheel drive small car transmission in the design, and then a small pickup rear axle. So it kind of gives you an idea, kind of the scope of it and kind of the size of that, and that's the topic of what we're working on. Let me just tell you a little bit about us and also our partner, Village of Hope Uganda. Back in 2014, actually I joined Baylor 6 years ago, and about a year into it, I went, actually Bill Jordan Series, our department chair then, and I said, Bill, I think this would be a good project to do here at Baylor. Something that engages the students in a competition type environment to design and build something that serves people. Our students come to Baylor because they want to use their gifts to help folks. And so we kicked this off in 2014, and it's been quite an interesting experience. To get students, our engineering students haven't necessarily used wrenches before, but we typically go out to the pick and pull and grab parts off of cars, and so we're crawling around underneath there. A lot of welding, fabrication. This is a picture of our first car all painted up and ready to go to competition back in 2015. Oops, back up. Something went too fast. Oh, so there is a BUV competition that's held every year over in Batavia, Ohio, sponsored by Institute for Affordable Transportation. We've been participating in that, driving 15 hours, 16 hours each way, pulling our BUV up there in April. We've been in 5 competitions. so far, and it's quite a good experience for the students. We've gotten 2 second places and 1 third place. There's usually only about 8 or 10 cars, so it's not as big as like an SAE competition, but certainly it has all of the same elements. We've actually built 5 cars in 5 years. I think that's quite a feat for a student organization like this. The students like to name them. You can see what that is up there. We actually still have our BUV1 around, and it's number 4, which is just finished up in April of this year. I do want to point out that the BUV2 actually is sponsored by Mission Waco there in Waco, Texas, and it's actually in Cap-Haïtien, Haiti right now. We built it in Waco. They shipped it there to pull around a pumping rig for a business for the women in Cap-Haïtien. Here's Bay Mate, that means fantastic in Acholi. And so that's the name of our BUV3. That's the 2018 car that we built. And actually we got to go back in 2019, and that's me sitting on the car that we just finished up this past May. So that's kind of a history of at least the BUVs. You can kind of see they all have kind of the same form. We've used different drivetrains, and we've evolved the design along the way. Our partner over in Uganda is Village of Hope. That's started by Cindy Cunningham and Rose Aber. They were over there in about 2004. Rose is actually from Uganda. Cindy's from Dallas. They were over there, and they were up in Gulu, and they came across where all the children were sleeping on the ground, just rows and rows of children sleeping on the ground because it was too dangerous to be sleeping in their huts at night. Joseph Kony would come around at night and take the children out and turning them into soldiers, having them kill their friends or even their family, their parents. So they would all come to the city at night, come to Gulu. They saw this and they realized there was a need, started Village of Hope with 14 students back in 2009, I believe it was. So anyway, today Village of Hope has moved on from there. Certainly, there's 2 places or 2 villages. They've got the Bwali village and the Bobby village. You can see Bobby's up close to Gulu. Here's Bwali. That's actually where the secondary school is, and that's where the vocational school where we did the building of the BUV was down here at Bwali. 8 miles from the Nile, so I actually got to ride a motorcycle down to the Nile one night. That was pretty exciting. Anyway, you can kind of see the numbers here, ministering to somewhat like 2,500 students. This just shows a picture of the Bwali village and the vocational school that's there. So I wanted to put one equation into my talk. So there it is. Village of Hope times BUV is equal to amazing opportunity. I do want to mention just briefly, this is we actually went over to Uganda twice now on this as part of a Baylor missions project. They send somewhere close to 700 students a year on missions, and there's a few that I've listed up here, and you can see the highlighted ones are from engineering. So there's our group from May 2018. 17 Village of Hope students were working with 9 Baylor students, and then we had some other team leaders. And there's Bill Baker standing there in the background. He's actually one that put up some money. He's a benefactor that has been supporting Village of Hope for 10 years. So let me just say a little bit about the design and build. I'll go through this pretty quickly. We had to work together. There's things that we brought to the table. There was parts that the Ugandan Village of Hope vocational students brought to the table. We got the job done. As you can see here, anytime something was needed where we needed all hands on deck, they were so eager to help to do that. We had to use the available tools there. All the cutting was pretty much done with angle grinders, and we used drills. I remember aligning a shaft with a level. Okay, so you have to use what tools are certainly that are available. Here's the subframe that we put together. There's a Changfoot diesel. If you ever look up Chinese walking tractors, you'll see these all over the place. It's a 20 horsepower, 50 foot-pounds of torque engine. We do a belt drive down here. We have to actually make a shaft that runs a Toyota Corolla front-wheel drive transmission that then takes the power to the back axle. Just some pictures of the frame as it came together as well. Like I said, the students are so eager to learn. I started talking to them one day about gear ratios and the transmission. They all gathered around, started taking notes. It was just amazing. At one point, we have to pull the transmission apart in order to weld up the spider gears. I could go into details about that. But it took all day, and they all crowded around. Their personal space is a little bit less than ours. Okay? But I'll tell you, there was a student standing on the table leaning over to take bolts out. They were so eager to be a part of this process. This one here, I may skip this video for now because I think I'm running a little short on time, but this is a first drive of the BUV. I do have another video, one that probably shows it a little bit better. And so we had this BUV together and running, probably without brakes, but no, nonetheless, BUV together and running in 8 days. We got there, we sent over a list of goods ahead of time, steel, the engine, transmission, all that stuff. We took 2 suitcases full of stuff that I thought probably would be hard to get in Uganda. And in 8 days, we took a pile of this stuff and made a running car together with the students at Village of Hope, Uganda. It was an amazing experience. So let me just show you a bit video. We got back and they took a number of pictures and videos. They did a great job of putting this together. I think it's worth watching. As it loads. Well, Baylor had put together a flyer last year that showed basically a picture of our BUV with the students riding it and a little explanation about what our purpose is. Luckily, that flyer landed across the desk of Bill Baker, who has been a supporter of Baylor for a number of years and also has ties and supports Village of Hope, Uganda.
When I originally spoke with Dr. Smith about the BUV project, we initially discussed, well, you know, there was the BUV in Waco.
And when he saw that, he emailed the engineering school pretty quickly and said, hey, I like your vehicle and I want one in Uganda, but I don't want you to build one and send it over.
So in the conversation, you know, quickly turned to, well, what would it take to, you know, put together a plan to build the BUV, and let's see if the vocational students build the BUV here with guidance from the U.S. And then Dr. Smith goes, why don't we just go over with the team and we'll work side by side with the students and help them build it.
And that's kind of how it all got started. The travel didn't go quite that fast though.
So basically we're going to be trying to teach the Village of Hope how to build a BUV in 2 weeks, a little bit less than 2 weeks.
It's very direct to take what we know, put it into a vehicle that's not only providing them a vehicle, but providing them with a training experience on how to build that vehicle.
Anytime you can take a design and move it into real world applications, it's really exciting.
One of the big challenges that we had to keep in mind is the ability to design something that can be built with minimal tools and minimal resources that we have available in Uganda.
So we're sourcing products over there because the whole part of BUV is building with what's locally available. So whatever's in Uganda is what we have to use because that's what they have there.
It's a utility vehicle, so it can be used for all sorts of reasons, like if there's a need for water or for crop movement, all the way to having to move a person that's been injured to a nearby city that has a doctor. I think it will be a huge resource used in Uganda because there's so much flexibility.
An important aspect of this trip is to interact with the people of Uganda, the students, the children that are there, and they can learn from us, we can learn from them.
When you come here and you get involved, you just love the kids. And everyone who comes and gets involved loves the kids and wants to do things for the kids.
Once you get to know someone's name and a little bit about themselves and their interests, it's very easy to make a connection.
Being able to travel, all the way across the world to build a vehicle it's an amazing experience. It teaches you both the culture and also teaches you how the struggles they face in their daily lives.
We're helping people who deserve help. They've been through so much, and if we can help them and empower them to do more with what they have, then that's incredible, and I really want to be a part of that.
I have to say that this program is very good. It will help us give us knowledge. It will help those people in the society.
I'm so grateful for this, for
University for their support on this program. And God bless you so much for what all you're doing. Because actually you're investing new knowledge in us. So as we're going to use it for our future.
So I always got to chuckle because I know the video where the guy's coming into the building, he didn't stop until he got to the back wall.
Yeah.
So that's always a little bit of a memory there. Let's see if I can get moving on here. Sorry. Oops. Okay. Just real quickly, I'll finish up here. I mentioned just an idea about missions-driven learning because there's so many aspects of a project like this that benefits a lot of the students. And you know, these mission-driven trips certainly offer unique learning experiences. And you know, the desire of our students to help others is just tremendous, and it really shows in their involvement in this type of work. I mentioned this in the paper if you want to take a look, and there's some references there as well, that you know, our students now, they're looking for something bigger, right? I know there's a lot that's said about millennials here and there, but there are studies that are done, and they're definitely want to focus on things that have more impact maybe than more profit, and things that relate to inequality and poverty. This also helps our programs, service learning experiences, have high student engagement and high female participation as well, helps with recruiting and retention, and also addresses several aspects in the ABET outcomes. So there's a lot of things there that could help. So just finally wrapping up, last slide, just some personal impact. This is Seth Emick, our president for the last 2 years, has just graduated. I need a new one. Anyway, I think he said the same thing in the video, so maybe I'll skip on down to Denise. He's so grateful to Baylor for his support of this program, and he's very appreciative of the knowledge. The one that I thought was pretty interesting, I made Facebook friends with Innocent Onek, and I got this Facebook post a couple weeks after I got back, and it says, Professor Doug Smith and the team from Baylor University, we the students of Village of Hope are missing you, and we love you, and we see you back next time, if possible. We still remember the day you were with us when we are making our BUV from our school. I was one of them. So in conclusion, just I could read through these. Probably the first one is the main one, is God thinks a lot bigger than I think. I can't imagine when we started this 5 years ago that I'd be in Uganda twice building a BUV, or that we could even possibly do that. And so certainly there's a lot that's involved. There's our two BUVs, one from 2018 and 2019. So with that, Hoya Matek, that means thank you very much, and Macholi. And actually this is the picture from our 2019 team that was just over there in May. So with that, I'll open up for questions.
We have to move to the next thing, right? So
yeah, maybe you could take this one or maybe those two questions.
I was gonna say, do you want to just hold them off and they can grab Doug?
Sounds good.
That way we can move to ice cream and poster session.
So next session is the poster session, and we do have the CES business meeting after that, which is an agenda. So we were planning to start the business meeting at 1:45, I believe, and I don't want to cut the poster session short though either, because there are good posters out there, and we'll like to give that a little bit of time. So let's try to be back in here around 10:02 for the business meeting.
You mentioned this before, but you've got a great rec area over there. I went over there earlier today.
Yes.
Really nice 4 lanes of bowling. So like 8:45, anybody wants to do that and play pool, just go home.
So, poster session. I'm just going to ignore that. Steve is sitting right next to him, so for the poster session, let's do this. Those who are going to stand by the posters, you will get dessert first. So let's let them go.
Yeah.
The dessert line is on the other side of the stairs.
The business meeting is for everyone except him. I have to be a member of the
So
society.
presenters, go ahead and grab your dessert. We'll follow after that.
Those who want certificates, grab them down, up, grab them, around, dessert area.
It's a common ground.
We have been able to rely on because we have just that, yeah,
knowingly, and it's relatively short. We're not using that. It's lazy. I'm not having to say that. But not that I've seen.
we still, along with that,
It doesn't take us they also different parts of the state.
It's just across the road.
Yeah, that's sort of our blessing and our burden, I guess. We do really appreciate that work. We rely on the global horses. We push them up. Yeah, 120 seems like to me that seems like an unattainable number for us.
Well, yeah, well, we have 4 Bible because a lot of these don't allow people.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
It'll be a long day.
Verify it works.
Yeah, well, you got the front drive with you.
That's right. There it is right there.
What time tomorrow are you?
I don't think. back like what, 10:30 or something?
Yeah, well, it's been good. I'm glad
I was in
everything.
Portugal last week, and they lowered my file in Vegas, and that's how it went.
Yeah.
Where's there a bowling?
Yeah, it's in the basement of the campus center. If you go into the campus center and then just go all the way to the bottom. Yeah.
Oh, I just was at the track and walked around it.
Okay, so track is the rec
On
center.
yours,
Yeah,
we haven't
I'm
made a
Yeah,
visit.
but I'm talking about the game room.
They just
That's
do
the
the
campus.
Apple version
So,
Center.
yeah.
So it's in the, across the causeway?
Yeah, well, it's correct.
Skywalk
Yeah.
across the skywalk.
We have a
Across the
variety of
skywalk,
different
go to the main
connections.
stairway area and
Yeah.
then down.
You know, the HDMI,
You go down and you have to go around.
VGA.
Okay.
Actually,
Because
based on that,
if you go down one level.
based on my
the
experience
building's a
in
stairway.
Portugal, I think I.
If you go down one level, then you're at the theater area, which is the grill
I can read
and
it.
stuff like that, and then there's another stairway.
Cause it had one of these.
It is. Yeah.
you,
Yep.
you'd like to try that
It does.
tonight.
Yeah, you get down to the bottom, like, wow, this is a place. So there's a worship art space.
Drive you over to your dorm.
The worship team, the track.
Well,
and worship
actually,
team.
let me walk over there and bring the USB stick and see if that's easy to make, yeah. Let me go do that, eat this, and
You'd like to ride part way, walking an issue.
walking down this. I will slow down today, it's just a really long day.
Yeah.
Let me walk over there and back, and let me see if I can get
We'll
this
try
right
to
here.
adjust some.
Vander, Lease. He's actually.
Nolan?
Yeah, he is Michigan.
I think I've got an extra book.
Can I take one
Last
overnight?
name is, or last part is
Or,
L.
he said we can buy them for a donation.
These are $15.
Yeah.
If you see, these are like kind of special because of, let me know how these work with your students and your
He's
class,
the,
email me.
I think he's the
That's you.
Yeah.
president of CITES. Certainly, they're, up until about maybe 3 captains.
You have 30?
For a few years, he was basically right.
Oh, here's him?
Yeah, it's very well. He actually is an actor in the movie where he's in the industry.
Oh, you like that?
I know 5. Yeah. That's to be fine.
Yeah, I normally, you know, we don't, at Dordt really have the habit of doing devotions in every class. We have, we'll do like, I'll do it in my first class, whether that's 8 or 9. So my first class of the day, which doesn't mean the students haven't had 1 or 2 others already somehow, you know, but, you know, somewhere, somehow along the way in class discussion, something that, you know, try to direct conversation, but it doesn't necessarily happen every day.
Expression all that stuff, like some of the matters. How do you tie?
Yeah, I mean, there's certain things you can say about the, I mean, the stewardship directive is conserve energy, you know, that environmental impacts of power plant cycles and things, you know, you can say, think about that, you can talk second about thermal, you know, that relates to how God has structured things and heat slipper. So it gets to be more of the creational structure side of things.
Yeah, that's good to do with conditions.
But, yeah, as far as, if I open with 8 or 9 in the morning, I'll often take something that's read recently. It might not have a very technical connection here. You know, I see just looking at the title, I'm not sure what the technical connection is to that. Yeah. So, when you talk about a chart like you did, that kind of gets at their numerical side or gets, and you know, like this would be nice to read on the actual day when this actually happens. Sometimes there are events on campus and faith and evidence, that can tie in maybe a little bit more to
Oh, you don't have to throw away the granular question?
I think most of our students come kind of wanting that, but then sometimes you wonder, when they leave here, out of that company, we're talking about industry, get a challenge. They want to be love people who are quite different and they have different beliefs, but none of their beliefs mesh with those beliefs, right? So then they start to get the challenge. My kids have done this, they have that same thing. And so
You have required chapels?
we don't have required chapels. We have one chapel a week where the chapel is full because it's good enough, you know, but we don't have required chapels. We used to have 2 opportunities a week. Northwestern down the road here, 10 miles, does have, and they, I don't know if they take pictures of the auditorium and they're sitting in the right spot, how they make it, how they do No, we don't do that. I think we'd be rejected. But we have chapels that are, like we have on the order of 1,500 students, and there's probably 1,100 up in the chapel. And that can depend a little bit on the personality of our campus pastor, who's really won their hearts, and they're just a strong chapel attending ethic. But not everybody goes. There's some that are probably just sitting it out.
That's a nice thing about like class devotions, is everybody has to go to
Everybody's
class.
there, yeah.
That's a chance for the professor to get, some, spiritual challenge, the meaning. Not go to chapel the whole year.
Right, there might be a few that don't. And I would think that over time you'll start to learn a little bit more about who those are just by their, well, not that they go to chapel, because we go to chapel too, and sometimes we miss single songs. But a lot of faculty also go. Some people don't miss it. Beat it in here. We have a worship arts minor. Engaged in series on the gospel of John. Our campus chaplain is a minister by the church here in town. He's also the one that's made the connection with one body, one hope. Bridge is documented in the Hall of Fame anyway, so then, yeah, they're going to that. There's other praise and worship opportunities on campus. Thursday nights there's something called Gift, and Sunday nights there's something.
Right, we just have chapel every Tuesday or something? Required, your chapel is Tuesdays?
Wednesday, at 11, from 11 to 11:40 or 45. The equivalent block on Mondays and Fridays is our community block, so we have first Monday speakers, like people who've written books and topics that kind of broad across college interest, Christians in their fields and so on. Fridays, we often have. It happens in the auditorium, the large auditorium, so it might draw. First Monday speakers, there's, once a month, 3 times a semester. And those are oftentimes, they're often be required attendance for freshmen who are taking this Kingdom Identity and Calling Intro to College Life. Yeah, by the time second semester rolls around, well, we double advise them from the very beginning. So they have their core 100 advisor, and then we also, in the department, assign engineering majors to that.
So how do you divide up, which advisors are doing that?
Well, we kind of divide them up by their expressed first interest and mechanical.
You still keep a core 100 advisor?
Yeah, that's the whole sort of general, how are you going to manage your time as a new college student, what are you here for, learning styles, general perspectives on your task as a student in God's world. That's all core 100.
Have that for the first semester.
Yeah. And we have a final bookend, that's a bookend, I guess, of the relative college experience. It's kingdom, identity, and calling. Where you situate yourself in the kingdom of God here, you're about to embark on. We have to discern who you are and further who you are and what your calling is. That's the other side of this thing, which is calling testing cultures. And when you come to your point of most gradually, you follow majors on board. And now talking together with other majors, interests, and that's the end. And then
College life and my
really? No. And college life is real life.
that was it too.
So I'll take this and I'll keep it.
Okay. Now feel free to share it with me.
I will. I'll pass it around with me.
Do you want to add a semi-official map and goal to new outcome? We're going to give a one-page handout to almost everybody from there.
I don't know what they've got up here.
On a very business meeting.
Opening prayer, Bill Jordan.
Yeah.
The next slide. So, I wonder before we disturb this, should I talk to Justin? If I end the slideshow. Gail, is this your computer or Justin?
No, it's Justin's, I assume, or.
David D? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's coming.
I got real problem, of course, but when about a third of the slides didn't show anything. They just showed Baylor University back. That's great. Can you save this to this computer then? Maybe the desktop or something.
The slideshow?
Yeah.
And I'll check that. Pull this down to the desktop and try again. Here there's one called 2019 CEC. Up here, point over there. Yeah. Okay, that works so far.
Thank you very much. That relieves me.
All right, it's good when these things work. When they don't work, it's hard to figure
I
out.
was forgotten I was doing the opening prayer. When you saw that, I remembered.
Oh,
Steve
yeah,
did
well,
ask
you
me
can
to
look
do
at
that.
the agenda. I guess.
Yeah, Steve did ask me to do that. With one of the officers. So, yeah, I can do that.
I'm gonna erase Steve's thing here, and I should talk to him about his case studies. As I understand it, his book, the book that he wrote on case studies.
Thank you very much.
still pretty involved in the vision of AVET, ASWE, multidisciplinary. Yeah. That's selecting people from multidisciplinary, or is that AVET or ASC what?
It's ASC
So people volunteer in sufficient numbers to do this review? How many visits have you done over here? 7 different visits over the years? Yeah. Gives you a good view of where you're going as well for your own internal growth.
Yeah, I'm just seeing it quickly helps too. There's an evaluator on the staff, right?
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
from a sort of keeping you honest perspective, like, I know how
You
it's
can't
supposed to go.
brush over around roughshod over us. But on the other hand, yeah, we've had probably lots of opportunity to help direct something a little way or here or there, a little way in improvement. Barely you get to your notes.
Everybody here.
shot. It seems like he's gonna stick with it. So.
That's like, God will find the right place. And direct me to give me the right kinds of, not guidance, but just accountability structures or whatever. Yeah, no, but it's like even they're leaving the house and going somewhere like to visit a friend overnight or something. I'm like, do they have to tell you? I'm like, I could not. I mean, I spent a year in this dorm, going to work or going wherever you needed to. So I'm sure you guys.
Yeah. What about you? I thought you were still with the school.
We're not. I just retired. We're actually, no. So Kern is already supporting our theology. So we are thinking about talking with it more broadly, not just about.
Well, Keith is about engineering entrepreneurship, and they emphasize not starting a company with entrepreneurial mindset. So you go these last goals, they're all about integrated education. They're about 15 years old. When they started, they were only a private faith-based school because they thought they faced from their perspective as Christian families, private because of their ability to teach. My observation is they always teach Christian. They've now expanded the number of public schools, including some big ones like their partly because there are so many state named applications and other schools that have their so they're expanding that. They used to give big grants to support projects, and now more smaller grants to support specific initiatives.
That would be the best way to make it.
A lot of what they support is that range with the things that they want to put in. That's why I said we don't have a grant right now. 5 of our people